The following is a conversation with Belinda-Jane, renowned psychotherapist, author, and founder of The Elements of Life, her unique and groundbreaking system for accelerated personal growth. Over the next 7 episodes, we discuss our relationship to the sacred pillars of time, money, love, and energy, and finding a pathway to perfect self-expression. Join me in this quest for authenticity and the intriguing journey into human consciousness. I'm Ronny Ruhlmann, and these are the Sacred Sessions. Belinda-Jane, here we are, episode 1.
I know. Can you believe it?
It's so great to be here because I've wanted to do something like this for so long. And when you first told me that you'd had this idea, this vision even, that we were going to be working together, I just thought you were joking. and here we are. And what a journey, and a journey is the word. So I'm so excited about being able to present your work, which was first introduced to me through a mutual friend who's no longer with us. And so I think of her today, and everything in life is a stepping stone, and I guess it's the elements of life, isn't it? And the next 7 or 8 episodes will be showcasing really the pillars and introducing the concept of this work to anyone who finds us, and it will. The right people will find the work.
Absolutely.
The work will find its own way. I have no doubt about that. My role is a messenger, and I'm honoured to be working with you. I can't believe it. But today is an intro talk. So Elements of Life is your system, your sacred system. You've developed that over 3 decades.
35 years.
35 years. I believe you had an interest in psychology when you were younger, which has now become this, and you've worked with hundreds of people in a one-on-one context, and this is why it's so profoundly important for us to now create a platform for you to be able to speak to a wider audience. The work is amazing. For anyone who's listening, I've done the work, so full disclosure there that I have experienced the work and have been changed by it. I was changed by it 30 years ago when you started in that beautiful Art Deco apartment in Neutral Bay.
Yes, indeed.
And a lot's happened since then in your life and in mine. And so, we circled back around together. You came back into my life at a time when I so desperately needed you. How you knew that, I don't know. We'll talk about that another time. This is all about you today. And I'd like you to talk about how did this come to be?
This is my baby. This is my life's work. And it actually is me. It speaks through me in quite a profound way. And I think when I began work, and as you know, I studied psychology, and I was always left adrift with it because there was something missing, intrinsically wrong. From 17, I was like, that isn't going to work. I don't know how that's going to work. Really young, it just didn't resonate completely. I mean, there's some fabulous parts of it that I did and will and have still integrated, but I was always searching for more, and basically by the end they were saying, you need to just go and do this yourself. They really kind of wiped their hands of me, and so I went. Because you were outside, you were outside the box.
Too obtuse. If there's an irony in that, and we've discussed it earlier, and which is that the founders of what we call modern psychology today. Yeah. The work that you do is not present there, and yet the irony is 100 years ago, or almost 100 years ago. And as you know, I have an interest in the work of Carl Jung, and he talked about consciousness, and yet he talks about these days when you see a therapist, the idea is that you're in crisis and you want someone to fix your life, and your wife's about to leave, or your husband's having an affair, or you've suffered financial distress, as so many people do, or your teenage children are running amok, and for the first time in your life you actually notice them and you don't know what to do about it. these are the real life scenarios that, and we'll come to that where people see you in, but or would see any psychotherapist in.
Yeah.
And it blows me away when people in distress that I know say, "Oh, I'll see a therapist for like 2 or 3 times," and delude themselves that is going to set their life on the right track. I mean, there's so much to unlayer here, but so getting back to the this idea of consciousness, and that you didn't find it in
conventional
the conventional system of teaching.
So I was searching, and what happened was, and as I said, always feeling lacking, that something was lacking, something was missing. And I remember when I hit on what it was always that in therapy, and because therapy means change, that's essentially what it means. It doesn't mean to talk around in ever increasing circles and arrive at the same place. It actually means to transform and change.
Well, that's therapy. Tell me again a definition of psychology.
Psychology is the soul, or the study of the soul.
The study of the soul.
Yeah, the psyche, right? She is mystical, and she is the goddess. And, I remember thinking or feeling how excited I was to go into that. Of course, I did psychology in college as well, so I knew that possibly wasn't going to happen. But I studied philosophy as well, and I feel like those two married together were amazing, because my psychology lecturer would say on the first day, you've come here to understand the meaning of life, and now 3 years on you recognise you know no more, because obviously he's a philosopher. But I recognised that everyone that searches outside for their answer is never going to find it. The answer resides within the soul, within the person. And so as soon as I came to that moment, that's when everything changed for me. And I started, I went to LA and studied hypnotherapy, pain control. I changed it through the years to hypnotic. And that internal connection is where I met the sacred, where it changed from a system, this is what you need to do, the diagnosis and prescription sort of human souls being pigeonholed, which is right against my grain, and actually went into the reality or the truth that sacred is actually an internal journey. So our system allows the person, supports the person, guides the person on a journey internal.
Internal. Can I just circle back around to what you said about overlaying philosophy into this? You're not the first human to have arrived at this. I think Socrates said, "Know thyself."
Absolutely.
So he didn't say, "Look outside for the answers."
Yeah.
So with that in mind, and I wanted to talk to you about sacred because we are calling this podcast the Sacred Sessions, because it's like the co-branding to elements of life is the simple sacred system.
Yeah.
Right. So the word sacred, and I did say to you that I wanted to touch on that. So your definition of sacred is that it is internal. It is your highest connection. Is it your God party? What is it?
Sacred is everything. Everything that we experience is sacred, right? Everything. There's nothing that isn't sacred. So, and that sounds like a really big call. Right? All of the pain, all the distress, all of the experiences we go through, they're all sacred experiences. What makes them sacred? You do. That's why someone telling you from the outside is never going to work, because you're the one that makes them sacred. You're the one that makes that call. So as you drop more deeply internal to find and attach or attract or connect with your sacred way of being, the world on the outside, as we've discussed many times, becomes sacred too. So you're looking through a filter or a lens of what the reality in my mind is actually, which is everything has a story, everything has a message, everything is carrying a truth for me, whether you choose to look at it or you don't choose to look at it. And our system is really about giving you the stepping stones to really look at that. So it's consciousness, it's almost the mystical, I guess, is what I imagined had psychology been what I wanted it to be. It would have held a mystical kind of element, which means it's everything.
A lot of people, I think, would associate sacred with, with beauty and with a godlike experience. But you're saying that even in the depths of despair, in your most painful, deepest, darkest moments, if you allow yourself to go there, you will find a different kind of beauty. You're a sacred. So that experience is sacred to you. That makes sense to me from my own experience, where I've not avoided falling into those depths of loss, of pain, of grief. And
sometimes they're the only stepping stones that take you there, right? Because you wouldn't go deeper without those experiences. You wouldn't venture there by choice, actually, by freedom of choice. It has to be it is the human experience, right? Is pain to power, is what it is. So, and I feel like when I first started to speak about that and sit in the pain with people come to me mostly when they're in pain, when there's pain there.
And as a society, we tend to want to anaesthetise the pain.
Yeah, or medicate it, right?
Medicate it. I have male friends who, at various points in time, and they drink heavily, often too heavily. I've had an occasion where I've invited men to come and stay with me for a night or a weekend because of I was worried about them, and these are because we don't have these coping mechanisms. We don't understand what to do for the first time in our lives. When it all falls apart and these archetypal crashes, we'll talk about that. That's a whole another thing, right? So tell me about that when you're working with clients. So, okay, let me start with this. This is the question I want to start with. I want to frame it like this. As a percentage of clients that have come to you and found their way through your door, what would be the percentage of people who come in crisis as opposed to people who have heard of your work and want to come because they are seeking a higher experience?
It's changed so much in 35 years. Initially, everything was crisis. And in hypnotic, we would go to devastating and heart-wrenching places with every being on the second session, if not on the first session, when they were in hypnotic. And now I've noticed probably 5 to 10 years ago, something has shifted in consciousness where we no longer need to always open to the damage and danger that's being done on the deepest cellular level. They don't necessarily need to relive the trauma. I feel like that's been a bit of a stopgap to people moving through, is all of these words and all of these labels, and people can build a personality around trauma, and it's unhelpful, as is diagnosis and prescription, in my view. That's only my view, and that's what I've seen to be the truth. So I feel now where consciousness is, which is why this is timely for me to be able to say, having been through a very challenging last 3 years personally, and having applied our work to those 3 huge challenges that came to me, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt and completely self-assured in the words that this always works. This always works. How often do you hear that, right? What other system is there? I mean, it sounds a little bit arrogant, but self-assured Angelica, our executive director, said to me, maybe use that one, Mum. So that is the essence of it, really, is that I know this always works. And how could I sit back and go, I'll just keep that to myself? And 9 out of 10 clients would be on the lounge saying to me, oh, more people need to know about this. This is just crazy. Right, so it was all of their voices saying, get it out there, get it out there. And I'm quite an introvert, so that felt quite confronting for me a few years ago. But as I said, having just endured these challenges and these opportunities for growth, and feeling as though I've arrived at a really strong and powerful place directly as a result of those things, I can sit here and say even these things are managed with these 4 steps and these sacred 7 things, right? The elements of life, the simply sacred system, it covers everything. And so I guess I had to have the confidence that using a platform would be able to translate this onto a larger scape. mindscape or consciousness-scape, because it was called to do that. That's actually what I was always told through my cells, every fibre of my being, was going to happen. So that's why I'm doing it now. That's why it's coming to being.
Belinda-Jane, I want to pull something forward. I want to talk about the program, but at this point in the conversation, I want to speak about the duration. So the
6 weeks.
6 weeks, and it was 6 weeks 30 years ago when I started with you.
Yeah.
And you do the 6-week program, and I remember the last one so clearly, and it was profound. And it didn't give me all the answers to life. I still had to go on and learn other things, but it was such a big stepping stone for me in opening up an idea for me that I could never unhear or unsee in myself. Now,
that's the really funny story. Do you remember when you came back 35 years later, and we did that same? You did the 6 weeks again, and we did that. God, and remembering God to me is everything, as I spoke about sacred. It's the G is the generator, the O is the organizer, and the D is the director of your lifescape. So I remember you were just about to drop into hypnotic, and I said to you, Ronny, a lot will have changed in this time. I bet I didn't have the confidence and the courage and the gall to say that you are God and God is it back in those days. And you looked at me straight in the eye and you said exactly the same thing then as you're saying now. And I was really taken back because I felt that's something that I'd eventually gotten to. I didn't really, because I had no touchstone for that. I had no remembering for those thousands of people in between that and this, right? And where that all of a sudden changed gears in the circuit, that God particle flicked on for me. But you said, no, you were always talking like that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because at the time you said to me, you asked me a very direct question, did I have an issue? Was I offended by the term God? And I know a lot of people today, I speak the word as in I use the word of God as a definition. You could easily, I can just as easily for some people who are offended by the word God because of their religious upbringing, the school they went to,
and often rightly so,
and that system.
Right? Yeah.
So I then switched to unified field of consciousness because it's a more palatable. It's the same thing, right?
Truth and
unified meaning
everything.
Oneness. The Eastern philosophies call it oneness.
Yep.
Everything, but not to drift away from the 6 weeks. Why does conventional psychotherapy sometimes have people come in for a very long period of time, and there seems to be no conclusion to it? And in fact, often they are kept on this wheel, reminded, and they're reliving a trauma, reliving it, whether that's childhood abuse, whether that's, and it's. Whatever the scenario, they are kept on that wheel, and it's no wonder that people drift away from that and just say, I'm not really getting anything out of it. Yet your program is finite, and what happened to me on week 6 happens to everyone on week 6.
Yes, it does.
Why? Why is it so?
I'll tell you, and it's no surprise or secret for anyone out there who's done the work. The first part of it, the first module, the first session, is letting go of everything that's not divinely designed for you. So how do you know when something's not divinely designed? Is it feels like the trauma or whatever it is that's got you through the door. That's what's not divinely designed. So to actually understand that there is the opportunity and there's great power in letting go of what isn't aligned to you anymore. Once it may have been, but now it no longer is. And that's such a pivotal point, and mostly in those sessions everyone cries and they apologize for that. And one of my big rules, no longer excuse, explain or justify yourself. This is what it is, and you're sitting in the moment of being allowed to let that go and to then process, and you watch the cell set in the being open, and all of the sensitizing events and pivotal moments start to be laid out on the table before both of us. and we have that in presence in that moment, and there's something awe-inspiring about it. So that was always the first one that I wrote, and I would never move away from that in any type of therapy. I think it's the only way to go, is the unfolding of the story of who they are and how they got here, and who and how they no longer want to be, right? So there's the letting go. The tuning in is the inner child, which is I feel, therefore I am. So it's not, we discussed this before we came live, and that is the idea that you can't think a feeling or feel a thought, and your feeling mind ultimately will always win. That's the subconscious, and that's locked into the human experience of consciousness. So that tuning in drops to the inner child, to the part of you that just feels. They're generally under 7 when they come through, and they carry the joy as well as the wounds, and we forget about that. We forget about an image of that child when there was pure essence of that God force, nature, life force, whatever you'd like to say, pure and pivotal in their being. And people connect 50% to the trauma. By the time the session is done, they've arrived at being held and heard, safe and secure, nurtured and nourished, protected, provided for, unconditionally loved, which is actually all every human being comes to feel. So it is actually quite simple. Then they have some bits and pieces of homework to do until I see them again, but then they start to honour the part that viscerally feels through the body, and they listen to their instinct and intuition, inner tuition, and start to hold it in a place of reverence and love rather than a judgment or criticism, which never works for anyone at any time, in any situation. So we get that off the table right in that session also. Children that were criticised and judged are damaged. Children that are complimented and encouraged thrive. It's really simple. The next session is image rehearsal, practising an image of yourself as if all of the paper selves fell away. Who would you be? How would you be? How would you look? How would it feel? And they image rehearse that, and then we kind of indelibly etch it into their the grey matter of their brain, of their mind, of their cells. And they begin to go, what if I could? What if I could really live and be and feel that way? And I'm like, yeah, you can. And so they practice that. Then they come back. The 4th session is teaching them that they have and have always had the key to hypnotic, to be able to drop into that sacred in them, to allow them to see that filter into the world before them. It's really no magical key that I hold, and I hand that over and teach self-hypnotic. And also we deal with what emerges during that period of time. Then the 5th session is all about the philosophy, so they take away the images, and that we have graphics that are, very practical application to being human is what they are. Then, as you know, the 6th session is the God session, the particle of life that you came in to bring, you came in to show and shine and share. And if you haven't been up until that point, that session, you see all the colours and you see all of the textures and the tapestry that you can weave. And from then on, people go, wow, I am, which is kind of the end of the work.
Wow, so much to talk about there, and we will. I think we've agreed that we will devote one episode to each of the pillars, not each of the weeks of the program, but how they weave into the program. But I think they deserve the full episode. So many questions there. What can you explain to everyone what the pillars actually are?
When I can give you a beautiful anecdotal story of how they came about. I was in LA finishing my hypnotic. We do in Los Angeles. You had to actually see a lot of people on closed circuit television. You can tell how old I am. And they would grade you to make sure that they could leave you with people and you could deal with what emerges, which is what my beautiful lecturer taught me. And a very dear, probably one of my closest friends, called me in LA and said, I've just been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I've got a 40% chance of surviving. You need to come home. And I was like, okay. So I did, finished up my work, came home, and I was sitting out as he started his chemotherapy, and that's when I had to drill down to what does it really mean to heal? Like, I'm watching this person that I love so much, what are the things? And that's when that's why I say about the work, this is not my work, it's come through me for us, if that makes sense. That's how I know I can call it sacred, because it's not something that it came to my mind or my brain or a thought. It's something that actually came through me and said, this needs to be shared. This is kind of the way to do it. So I sat on his back steps, and the elements, the process came about. And then what do people really need to know that they're not missing something, that everything has been touched on? And they were money, time, energy, and love. They were the 4 pillars around the work. So I found, and still find all these years on, that if we have clear and honest relationships and perfectly self-express, tell ourselves the truth around just those 4 pillars. When someone comes through my door and says, I feel so anxious, I feel so overwhelmed, I don't know where to go or what to turn to, and I can say, look at this graphic. You only need to have a relationship to these 7 things. You only need to understand yourself these ways. So that's where the 4 pillars came about, to hold up the peace sign and the heart in the centre. And as I've said, they've never failed, which is a huge statement, I know. But it's simple, right? So simple.
As you say, simple but not easy.
Not easy.
It took me a very, very long time to... as you put it, let go. And someone else prophesied that to me a very long time ago, Gary Hasty, and on a retreat in a rainforest. It was quite idyllic, and we were sitting in a little... it was this little, it was almost like an igloo, but you could sit in there, and it was a very intimate space. And he sat across from me, and he said, I'm going to share something with you that my Tibetan master taught me, and I need to give this to you now. And it is simply this: let go and you will have everything.
Absolutely.
And at that moment, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. It was that visceral. And I couldn't breathe, like I was winded. And I looked at him and I said, and he said, I know, I saw it. He said this, poof. He said, because he was one of these
shaman.
People who could see, a shaman. Completely. He is a shaman who could see my aura. So that was the concept back then. I didn't really understand what that felt like.
Or what it even means. What does it mean?
Yeah, and it's such an esoteric concept. As you say, simple but not easy. So it's almost a life's work. So let go of the things that you are not, in order to allow your truth to come forward, your authenticity.
Yeah.
As you know, I have a very, very deep interest in masculinity and in authentic masculinity. There's a lot of strange things happening in the world now, and around the concept of masculinity as a counter movement. This is not my forum, and I won't talk about this, but but authenticity is something that, truth, the concept of, the truth shall set you free. Mm-hmm. And it is so true. But truth starts with yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's profoundly an internal journey only. And it's so ironic in a way that here we are, our inaugural podcast, when I have spent the last 10 years saying to people to get off podcasts because it tells them, what I was watching anyway, is telling people what you should do. The shoulding, which of course flies in the face of our philosophy. And so I was like, turn off the podcast and listen to the podcast within your own cells and your own soul and your own psyche. And so I can feel people that are listening to this laughing. She told me all those years ago to get off podcasts. So I'm not being a hypocrite. I'm giving people the journeying tools inward. That's how I'm professing it to myself anyway.
Was it the esteemed Dr. Wayne Dyer who said, should you end up shooting all over yourself? Was it? And bless his memory. And what a great man.
I know. I met him and with Deepak Chopra and Louise Hay when I was pregnant with our second child, and I went to speak, of course, as I would, to the God particle concept with him, and he said, we're saying the very same thing. I said, isn't that cool? And he said, I wonder who people are going to believe. And I went, it's the same work. And I went, okay, I'll give it to you. They're going to believe you.
Well, his work's still out there. He's still floating around on YouTube. He made a great contribution, as did Louise Hay, as did Deepak, in different ways. I mean, they're coming at, they're all coming at, they're coming at it in their own unique way. And what are they really coming at? What is the thing that we're talking about? Of
Absolutely.
course, it's living our best life, isn't it? Very simply. And that's one of the things one of my personal aims with this podcast is to take the mystique out of the mystical, if that's possible. There is, whether you believe it or not, even if you are one of these purely science-based individuals, and I know a few of them.
Oh, one of my best friends. And
I don't need to. They love arguing. They love arguing about that there is no such thing as a supernatural, and no, it's just that we haven't been able to measure a lot of that, and we are coming to terms with a lot of that. And I think science is moving closer towards a convergence with understanding concepts of thought and transcendence, and
the second that we feel that we understand it, we're nowhere near it, right? The second that we can package it or think it.
Well, how do you measure a knowing?
Yeah, you can't. A knowing this is why those words transcend the thought. And they transcend the packaging of it. They transcend the science of it. I mean, it is being proven. If one needs proof of that generating, organising, delivering capacity within the being, if they need proof of that, they can search for that. It's not ever been an important part for me because, as you said, there's a difference between believing in something and just knowing it to be true. And I've always, from actually quite a small child, I always knew there was something else. I couldn't wrap words around it, of course had no concept for it, and it's gently kind of unfolded itself over 60 something years, and yeah, I'm so grateful for that. It's been my journey, it's been my path, and that's why we felt ready to share this, I guess, because it's profound for me, and I never want to feel that it's minimized, because that does take the mystique out of it. It does take it puts a limitation on something that's limitless to the all that is, has ever been, that ever shall be, putting almost like brackets on it. It starts here and it ends here. That's just not the truth of it at all. The essence of life began never and eternally will shift and change. Whether our planet exists or not is completely in our hands. But the essence, I used to teach my children when rarely the conversation around God came up. I can talk over time about some funny conversations there. But I remember knowing that God is love. And I remember seeing that on bumper stickers in LA and going, oh, that's so trite. But I actually know that to be true now, And I said to them, God is the essence of us longing for ourselves, and we're all particles, and it's all drawn together in this hard mass. We're all particles
of the
that, one.
God is the essence of ourselves.
We've had this discussion. When it's gone, Ronnie.
Okay.
And my clients go, just a minute, let me write that down. What did you say? And I'm like, no. And they went, you're kidding me.
That's okay. I'll have to rewind that to catch that. Because I didn't want to interrupt you, because I know when I interrupt your flow, you're in the, yeah. I won't do that again. Keep going. It was so God. So the concept of God being love.
Yeah. God is love. God is absolutely. That bumper sticker was right in LA. Who'd have thought it? When I was tearing around on the back of my boyfriend's motorbike, not me. But here we are, and known it inside and out and completely. But I said to the girls, life's longing for itself. So as the particles of life come together and form density and mass, and what the universes have always done is come together and blown apart. We know that. That is quantum, that is physics, right? So this is the same thing that happens to us. The cells all come together and then they blow apart. And I said to the girls, each one of you are the particles of God and life force longing for itself, longing to come back to the wholeness of all being together, the oneness, which is what the word holy in my mind anyway means. Yeah? The wholeness is the holy. And I'm very happy for it to be a Christian concept for the people. I mean, I study religion, as you know, for those years. But I feel like it's everything and everybody. I don't like it being labelled and named as something that it's only and just this for this group of people. That's caused so much death and destruction and terror, really. That someone is right and someone is wrong in the way they believe in the very essence of what it means to be human. I think that's been our mistake. If anyone was ever to say to me, what would you change about the world, that would be the thing that I would change.
There is a lot of suffering in the world. Every religious tradition talks about suffering in a different way. Yeah. Who's the author of The Road Less Travelled? And I remember the very first sentence, the book opens with, life is hard, full stop. Mm. Life is hard. And that doesn't mean it doesn't have an incredible and inherent beauty and aspects of that and moments of joy, certainly, and high level experiences. Do you think it is the human condition that we suffer, that we have pain, that we inflict pain, that we experience pain, that we have the childhood wounds, and that Jung was so interested in, and then talked about this as a collective. And am I understanding this correctly, that the pain is what drives us to a higher experience, and therefore it is an essential part of the human experience?
Absolutely.
Is the pain.
Yeah.
And we have a choice there. We can choose to ignore it, or we can choose to delve into it and to find the healing, the love, the forgiveness, the acceptance. Yeah. What I call the road to redemption in a personal level.
You know, the best analogy or metaphor that I can use in answer to that question is a mother giving birth. You know, as the universe births herself all the time. And you recognise when you're birthing a child, you go through a change of identity. You move from a maiden to a mother across that bridge. But you go through the intensity of the pain it's the way that you actually have spoken to yourself about what that pain means. So if we could translate that or move that across to, and then I get this, and you smell that baby and hold that, the power that woman feels having done, you know, she has to die a little. You die a little when you birth a child. A part of you leave on the other side of that bridge, right? And that's what makes you an awesome mother, right? Is the fact that you would then die for this being, where it always used to be about you. So it's birth, literally. So pain, birth to power, and then arrival is exactly the best answer to that. Why pain? Because that's what you get. When you really go through it and you drop into it, the arrival is pure bliss and joy and power that nothing else can bring you. You can't read about that. You can't listen to a podcast and find that. It is an internal mission and journey.
I think I've shared this with you earlier today, that the idea, through a conversation with a friend of mine, that often genius has a very difficult path, and some of the standout humans along the way that we've seen, there's a common thread there. Or my friend was saying there seems to be a common thread between genius and having a tortured life, or having a childhood they can't escape from, and yet what it drives that individual to greatness. And I see it as maybe, if you look at a diamond, a diamond is not sand. It's not ordinary sand. It's not ordinary soil. It's special stuff, but what it has to go through to become that.
Pressure.
And I've always thought of, I always like the metaphor of forged steel. Again, the best steel is just forged over and over.
Yeah, the samurai swords.
The samurai sword and layered and hammered and layered and hammered.
Though, right?
And it's like if we, so on that train of thought, if we accept that we have an opportunity, and it's only an opportunity, it's not a given, an opportunity to grow through pain, and many of us will choose not to take up that opportunity, and then push it down the road, and probably meet that pain in a deeper
Completely.
way.
You meet it again
in a deeper way,
and again
until you can no longer.
Until you integrate it. So when you were talking about the child,
so my question was, can we grow through love?
You have
Can
to feel
we grow
worthy.
through love?
You have to feel worthy and deserving of it first.
Oh wow, that's
No one grows through love until it's
a trap.
until it's theirs. Yeah. If it belongs to someone else, there's no growth. So it must belong to you. It has to be, I now feel worthy and deserving. So the child that, as you said about, they relive their trauma over and over again, and all of the great artists have this background, all of the great beings, whether they're a songstress or whether they're a poet or anything great, has come from the deepest, darkest places often. And so I prefer to say, rather than they sit in their trauma and that's what's made them who they are, I prefer to say when they integrate, accept and have a loving allowance for that as part of their experience, and then they can kind of bookmark it and pop the book up and begin to write a new chapter, begin to write a new volume, a new novel, with them being front and centre as that love particle of that's the writer then.
The affirmations that you refer to, of self-love, I've never, in my experience, they haven't done anything for me.
Affirmations don't work.
To buy a deck of nice affirmations, and every morning I look at that. No, that hasn't worked for me. It has to come from a place of truth, a place of authenticity, a place of acceptance.
When you find that place within yourself, that sacred, and it's kind of like I was going to say a soft spot, but it's just such a beautiful merging from what's on the inside to what's on the outside. It's then you can look at something, a card or a writing, and feel it rather than see it and think it.
That's the point, that it has has meaning.
Yeah. For you. Doesn't matter what it means to anyone else.
Belinda-Jane, I'm conscious of the time. I'll be can't wait to listen back to this, and what a moment in time for you and for me, certainly for me. Thank you so much for today. Before we go, can you just spend a minute talking about the program? So we're going to do another, what did we say, 7 episodes where we actually really drill down into those pillars. So today was sort of a great introduction. This could be 4 hours for me. Right? So thank you so much for your time today. And if someone wants to work with you, how do they do that? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, a website, Elements of Life Avalon. But, I'll put a link. Yeah, the most important thing really is that we had to wait for a moment when the work that we intimately do, one-on-one, person-to-person, could be translated and transformed into or en masse. And that's kind of what we're about now, moving to that next stage where this work will be available to everybody, because that's why it's ready. That's when it's ready, how it's ready.
Well, I can't wait to keep revealing the Simply Sacred system of elements of life. Sacred sessions are born. This is so exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.